guys, Lisa here. Today I'm going to be doing something really cool. I'm going to be making paper with dried flowers in it. It has a little bit of a backstory because months ago when I started making paper and I was talking to my sister about this, and my sister is my biggest supporter. She's genuinely such an amazing person. She said she would love to receive a handmade piece of paper with dried flowers on it and a poem by me written on it. And now, many hours of paper making later, I actually feel confident enough to make this happen. I've been drying flowers for 2 months in preparation for this, and now is a perfect time to try this because her birthday is coming up and she's the most amazing human being, so she deserves the best birthday present possible. So not only are we going to make a piece of paper, I have some ideas to make it something a little bit extra, but in the same theme. It's going to be a lot of trial and error because I've never done this before, but I'm so excited to try it. I love trying out new things. Let's just give it a shot. So I start off with adding a lot of pulp in my water so I can make thick paper. That way my flowers will have enough space to really get inside the paper instead of on top of it, because at the moment my biggest fear is to have all the flowers fall off once the pages are dry. I get my dried flowers ready. I have sorted them all and I'm not sure which ones I'm going to use yet, but I'm starting with the ones I have the most of and adding a little bit of those in the tub of water. It honestly looks so pretty when they're just floating around. I then get my mold and decal and make sure the pulp is moving in the water. Then I dip it in, like I normally would, but all the flowers completely floated off and nothing stayed on my page. So I just put it back in the tub and tried again, this time trying harder to catch the flowers.
Just don't escape me. Okay, that's not gonna work.
So it was time for plan B. Now I'm just going to ignore the flowers already in the water and just getting a sheet of paper like normal. Then putting it aside and adding the flowers by hand. I try to make it look a little random and sort of drizzle them on. Once I'm happy, I transfer it to a cloth sheet. This time I'm using a cotton bed sheet that I cut into pieces, so that one side of the paper will be nice and smooth. I make sure to really press it in and use all my weight when sponging out the excess water, so the flowers really embed in the paper, or at least that's what I'm hoping. I then slowly lift off the mold, and there is the first piece of flower paper. I transfer this to a hard surface and get another bedsheet ready. I'm doing the exact same thing again, making a page like normal, ignoring the flowers in the tub. And placing the flowers by hand. This time though, I'm really trying to place them more intentionally because I need to leave space for a poem. I then thought it would be smart to add some watery pulp on top so I would keep the flowers inside the paper. However, this just completely compromised the structure of the paper and was a huge fail. So we try again and pretend it didn't happen. I'm using the safe flowers from the previous failed attempt and really try to push them in already. Then it's time to transfer. Make sure to really press. And boom! Poem flower paper. I technically only need one that has space for a poem, but I want a few extra sheets so I have options. Once I think I have enough, it's time to try another technique. This time I'm adding as many flowers as I can to the water, so there's a lot more chance for them to get on my page. I add more pulp, mix it in very well, and I try to scoop a lot more to the surface so there's less water for my flowers to float away in. And this seemed to work! I have a beautiful page so I can immediately transfer it to a sheet. Press it in. And boom, more flower paper. I do this a few more times until there are no flowers in my water left. Then I take my stack of papers to my drying area, which is literally in my bedroom. That's why you see my unicorn slippers. I use 2 clothespins per sheet and just hang them up on a normal laundry drying rack with a towel underneath. The next day they are dry and ready to be peeled. I'm extra careful while peeling, afraid to rip off any flowers. I check how well the flowers are embedded in the paper, and it doesn't look half bad. The other side of the paper does have the relief of the flowers, but I think it adds character. Not all flowers stayed on as well as others, but you know, that's life. Overall, it turned out pretty good, I'd say. I also really liked how this poem paper turned out. The flowers look so good, and I think this is going to work very well. Now it's time to flatten my pages. Because these are thick papers, they would take a long time to get flat just inside the book press, and since I'm in a little bit of a time crunch, I decided to iron them to speed things up. Because these are so thick and I'm scared for the survival of the flowers, I'm only ironing them 1 page at a time. I sandwich them in between 2 pieces of cloth and going over them with a hot iron while applying pressure. They definitely turned out a lot flatter, but I still want them to flatten even more, so I get out my trusty book press. I put the paper down in 2 almost even stacks. Close it and tighten it up. Now I let them sit in there for a day or 2, and then we can finally turn the papers into presents. I framed a piece of paper that will have the poem in it and sorted through the other papers. There are some pages with a lot of flowers, some with a few. All of these will work though, because I'm going to be making a memo pad. Those things where you can write little notes and rip off each small piece of paper, you know, those things. So I'm going to do this by taking a page and cutting off the deckled edges so they're all nice and straight.
Then, by folding each sheet in half twice, I cut each paper into 4 memo pages. I do this with a bunch more papers, but I switched to measuring it out instead of folding, so it would damage the papers less and I would get more even memos. I do this until I have 50 memo pages, and I try to mainly choose the ones with flowers in them. Then I need to make a backboard for the pad. I don't know if that's what you call them, but I am now. I make it out of cardboard and a scrap piece of fabric. I found this really cute design that I thought would fit perfectly with the flowers I use, and I'm just trying to find a piece big enough, but luckily I don't need a lot. Then I measure out the backboard on the cardboard. Because I wasn't smart enough to bring a box cutter or anything, I'm just going to cut this with my paper cutter. I don't recommend this, but desperate times calls for desperate measures. And with some effort, it turned out okay, and I got my piece of cardboard. Then it's time for the fabric. I simply glue the piece on top of it. I cut off the axis. And cut out the corners. I can then fold and glue over the edges like so until all the sides are glued down. Then I only need to add a blank piece of my paper on top. And there's the backboard. Now we can assemble it all. We're going to glue all the papers and the backboard together, so I'm getting my smaller book press out. I try to align the papers as well as I can, but this is a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. Once I finally manage something, I close up the book press with some more effort. And then it's time to glue. I use simple PVA glue and I'm quite generous with this. I'm not too worried about getting it on the book press because any excess I just wipe away. And then we let it dry. While that dries, it's time to make some wrapping paper. I have some blank craft paper that I'm personalizing with these 2 mushroom stamps, because who doesn't love mushrooms? I don't really have a plan and just kind of stamp it all over. Once done, I can wrap the picture frame in this paper. And to be even more extra, I also add a completely useless wax seal just for the aesthetics. And here are the finished presents. I absolutely love the way the poem turned out on the paper. It was terrifying to write on the paper, but I managed without making a mistake. I love the way the flowers look behind the glass, and the texture of the paper really works with the whole thing. And this is what it looks like wrapped. And here's the finished memo pad. I'm so happy with how it turned out for a first try. It definitely looks handmade, but I don't mind that personally. I love the look of the paper with the flowers, and the backboard fits great. The glue also doesn't look super ugly, and I think it's overall a pretty cute gift. I hope you like the results too. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want loads more paper making and bookbinding videos, and check out the video here if you haven't already. I only just started doing YouTube and have so many more ideas I can't wait to do. Hope to see you next time.